Hello, everyone. Welcome to Retail Corner. I'm Shailja, and this is my third episode. And today I am with a guest. Please welcome Saket Saurabh. He is the CEO of Nexla. Nexla is this extremely unique company which is in the space that we hear a lot about data management, data operations, what it is, how he got there, and such a superlative career we are going to hear. Welcome, Saket.
Hi, Shailja. Very nice to meet you, and thank you for the kind introduction.
Okay, great. So, firstly, Ranchi. I'm from Calcutta.
Oh,
So
okay.
let's go back to your roots, Ranchi, St. Thomas School, and
Yeah.
the Steel City. How was the experience in Ranchi? Do you go back often apart from the COVID thing?
I do. I have a lot of family still there.
Oh, so
Yes.
you are still the Ranchi boy.
Yeah. And
Okay,
I
okay.
think we share a lot of the common bond culture with Calcutta. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I have been actually. My family, I think somebody from my family used to work in Ranchi a lot, like the road
Yeah.
construction and things like that. So I remember a lot of stories about Ranchi. A lot of my friends from school days in Calcutta used
Uh-huh.
to. So you are probably 2 years junior than me. I looked up. So
Okay.
yeah, so I passed out high school in '93. You passed out in '95. So
Yeah.
not. So I'm sure if we actually do the typical desi thing and deep dive, I'm sure there will be a lot of common people between Calcutta and Ranchi.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So your
Yeah.
jump from Ranchi to you went to IIT.
Yeah.
So the experience from Ranchi to IIT, was that something that was already ingrained in you, or you were just one of those kids who knew exactly what you wanted to do in life?
I've always been a tinkerer as a kid, and being attracted to an engineering-oriented career was just natural to me. My dad was an engineer as well, and that did land me in IIT. And I was already fascinated with computers by then. By the time I went there, my dad used to work in software. So yeah, the whole experience, became about how to use technology initially for the sake of it, and then more so about how it, is an important part of the ecosystem. And we'll talk about how we play that in retail as well.
Okay. So then your jump from IIT to Wharton,
Yeah.
right? Or Stanford and then Wharton. Again, that was a culture at home, or it was an individual understanding of you because of your friends? Because in Calcutta, Ranchi, these kind of places, and our generation at that point of time, the idea or ideology that you want to go abroad and study was always there with very limited number of students for various reasons. What was your journey? Like, how did you get into it?
I think it was always about I want to solve some hard problems and difficult challenges. And I think IIT did give me a taste of that. And at the time in 99, when I was graduating, the complexity of technology problems you could work on was much higher in the US than in India, as far as computer software and technology was concerned. So
Mm-hmm.
that did lead to the transition. And I was very fascinated with how something works, including like
Mm-hmm.
how computers work, how they build, how they scale. So that led me into a few different startups where I was working on the lower layers, like operating systems and stuff, into
Mm-hmm.
companies like Nvidia,
Mm-hmm.
because again, fascination with video games and performance of games got me to work a bunch of my career over there. But the desire to create,
Mm-hmm.
which is what is the sort of thing, eventually translated into becoming an entrepreneur, which is like, look, I see a problem, I want to solve it. That's the basic thing, right?
Correct.
And that
Correct.
eventually, I think, led me to the path of entrepreneurship, which is, I want to go solve that problem. And Wharton was basically the thinking that I was already in the San Francisco Bay Area, in the Silicon Valley, working in all of these companies. I had been on the side taking courses at Stanford because learning is just a natural thing for me. My
Mm.
mom was a teacher. I don't know, whatever, but it is just that thing
Right.
about trying to learn.
Mm.
And yeah, at some point, I was like, I want to focus a couple of my years properly into transitioning from being an engineer who is building technology and solving that problem to an entrepreneur who's like solving a broader, like, overall a business problem.
Okay, so I
uh,
did notice on your LinkedIn that you worked in Nvidia for about 5 years. Then you
yeah.
were at Rubicon. You did a bunch of different types of work in the tech space, and then you jumped into data. the
Yeah.
whole big data. So in Nvidia or in Rubicon, what were the elements that you were working on that helped you understand that, okay, data is the big thing, and whatever I'm doing here, at the back of my mind, that 80-20 rule of Google, if you had to follow in my private time, I'm going to focus on data. What was about data that struck
Yeah.
you at that early age?
So NVIDIA was a lot about compute. How fast can you process things? And that translates into video gaming. How realistic can a game be? And all of that stuff. Now, the entrepreneurial side of me was already, even in NVIDIA, was working on new business initiatives. I got into the early work on automotive and mobile and PlayStation and all those things. Um, the um, the post Wharton experience about starting the company landed me into, so I started a company in the advertising space,
Mm-hmm.
and we built one of the first mobile ad servers out there. We became part of Rubicon project and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But advertising turns out to be a highly data driven ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
What are people seeing? What is engaging with them? And it was one of the earliest industries with huge amounts of data. If you look at a lot of data innovation coming from like Google and Yahoo and Facebook, has
Mm-hmm.
been because they could capture that data, tap into it, and then ask questions of it and say, hey, if I show an ad to this person, are they likely to engage? Or what should I charge somebody to show this ad, for example, if you're buying an ad slot. So Rubicon became, so Nvidia was all this compute. How can we compute a lot? Rubicon was about how can we deal with data at a high volume. Our system was doing 300 billion data records a day. You
Mm-hmm.
bring that two together because a lot of data doesn't work without a lot of compute. And naturally, for me, the thinking was, well, it is a complex problem. More industries need to work with data, and I could see that sort of benefits that we were seeing in advertising
Mm-hmm.
world. So it was natural that some solution has to emerge, which can handle the data, which can handle the compute. And the third leg that got attached in that experience of building the company was that it has to be simple. It
Mm.
has to be simple enough to use because there is no way there are enough engineers in the world to solve
Right.
everything hands on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Contrary to what Indians would say, the number of engineers that pass out and are not with jobs. So that's a different conversation.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
Anyway, but thank you for pointing that out. So basically, what I understand from you is that you always had this innate kind of tendency to go towards looking at problems and trying to solve it. So
Hmm.
problem solver is an innate habit or a DNA that you've had for a long time that kind of helped you in deciding which path you want to take, if I
Yeah.
had to sum it up.
Oh,
Great.
yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So Mob Smith, is that the name I'm pronouncing? It was
That was the
acquired by.
startup I created in 2009.
Correct.
Yes.
So so I see a lot of you looking at different types of data, and from there, then jumping on to the journey from employment to entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
That is pretty much like taking a leap of faith, like skydiving. You're standing at the edge of the plane and you have to take that jump. For
Yeah.
you, was that an easy decision, or all the work that you were doing was working towards starting something on your own? What
It
was
was,
that
yeah.
journey like? Yeah.
Um, I think in many ways I was heading in that direction. The first job that I had in 99, I quit in 4 months to join a startup.
Okay.
And it didn't work out. It died in the dot-com crash.
Mm-hmm.
And the lessons were there, and those lessons were like understand how an organization is built and run, understand how technology works that happened at Nvidia, and then understand how to build that and kind of learn a systematic way that was Wharton. So yeah, Mob Smith was kind of natural at that time for me to say,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
I think I am in the right place to start a company.
Okay.
Fortunately, my wife was like, fine, if you don't make money for 5 years, that's fine. I'll give you 5 years to try out.
Okay.
And that was, that gave me all the ingredients that was needed is like the trust from family and the desire to do stuff and feeling prepared to do that.
Okay. So let's talk about Nexla. First,
Yeah.
explain the name. How did you think of Nexla? What does it mean?
Nexla actually derives its name from a combination of two words, nexus, which is basically a common point where things come together, and the idea that, and the word labs, so Nex and LA. And of course, being able to buy and find a domain is an important part of naming a company.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so the thinking there was that what we were working on or thinking about was at the intersection of various things. Um, And because I was still ideating, that's how the name came in. Now, one of the things I'd learned was that names should ideally be 2 syllables for a company. It's easier for people to say.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't already mean something very specific, then it's easier to give meaning. So if my company's name is U-Haul, then I'm a towing company. There's no other thing you can do. So some of those things sort of came in to defining that, and Nexla became, and if you see, kind of our logo as well, like I have my
Mm-hmm.
hat here.
Mm-hmm.
So the two swooshes kind of denote data in and data out,
Okay,
because
fantastic.
that's where we sit in at the center of data coming in and data going out for the
Absolutely.
companies we work with. Yeah.
So let's now talk about what Nexla does. So I went on your website, and of course, very overwhelming. There are like a lot of services. You service a lot of big companies. And while I was looking, three case studies that jumped out, right? And I
Mhm.
had talked to you, briefly interacted with your team. So one was Instacart, one was
Yeah.
Vida, and one was Poshmark.
Yeah.
If you could quickly tell, like instead of me saying it, if you could quickly tell in two lines what these three are, and then we will jump into it, how it actually helped the relevant customers use these case studies, what was the benefit, and then we'll talk about the future of what 2022 means for your company and this whole industry.
Yeah, and I'll probably shed a little bit more light because across our customer base, beyond
Mm-hmm.
these three specific case studies,
Mm-hmm.
kind of sort of comes back to that sort of concept of Nexus much better on
Mm-hmm.
the Nexus side. So Instacart is the leading grocery delivery company in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
and a company that if you as a consumer you go to their app and you say I want to deliver these things or get these things delivered. Um, that experience underneath, as we can imagine, is powered by Instacart knowing what products are available in a store.
Yes.
Before they dispatch someone to with a grocery list, they have to know that this cereal is available in this store, in this aisle, 2 units are there, and so on. So at the basis of Instacart is a lot of this data that they get from various merchants across the country, across different categories. And Nexla is the company or the data layer, the technology layer that sort of sits between Instacart and all these merchants.
Mm-hmm.
So our job is largely to say that every company out there defines their data differently,
Mm-hmm.
call things differently. They have different ways of defining coupon codes or prices, or something is per pound. So all of that data is so diverse. Nextla's job is to unify that into something systematic and feed into Instacart system, so that now they have one clean data source to go, list on their website or do all the things that they do so well. Okay, um, so that's where the Instacart story is, um, and that's the data angle there. If you think about somebody like Poshmark and our other customers who are, retail, in a pure play way like Bed Bath and Beyond, or Poshmark, completely online marketplace, data plays a role in many parts of that business, right? So if you think about any retail company, from the point where they acquire a customer to somebody finds a product like a recommendation or discovery, to them going through a transaction where they're buying something and waiting for an item to be delivered, so order tracking, logistics, which is the delivery, all of those parts are data driven. So for Poshmark specifically, it was the initial story was very customer centric. It's a highly customer focused company, and the data that helps them better understand their customers, how to support them better. So again, millions of users and the data. And our job, again, as the data platform, is to make sure that the data which is residing maybe in a customer service system, where you get requests and tickets and all that, and the data that the data science team needs, which is in a particular system, in a particular format, all those things are interconnected properly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it has expanded into many types of data for them. Okay.
Correct. So
Um,
I noticed that you have one of your big services is data connectors, because one of the
Correct.
problems that a lot of people have, and based on my understanding of the retail industry, is that retail has been in our ecosystem for hundreds and thousands of years, and there are a lot of old companies who are still large are understanding the value of data now, and are now scrambling to find companies, like let's say there is some POS system which is 30 years old and there is some system which is 20 years old. So you have these connectors, so it doesn't matter if, let's say, if I'm a retail company with 40 stores but we have some really old solutions and new solutions. So could you shed a little light on your connectors and what are these connectors used for? And if you could just give some example of a real life problem that you were able to solve because of these connectors.
Correct. So let me give an example, right? If you think about a retail business,
Mm-hmm.
um, data is in all parts. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of legacy system. It could be mainframes running, back in there, and
Mm-hmm.
there's point of sale data, which is very real time. Like in the store, you charge a card, and then data goes in and says this customer bought these things. There's that data. Then even before that, before the customer gets to the store, there's data that comes from advertising systems. You are showing them an ad, maybe on Facebook, and showing them a product, and you're trying to be as accurate as possible. There's Google search data that comes in. What are people searching for, and so on. So there's that data that is coming in. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then we see, reviews and ratings. They become an important source of data for companies to better understand, and serve their customers. Recommendations. If you are recommending, if you look for something, you get these recommendations. They're also driven by data in the back end to say, what should we recommend this person? Right. What is happening? And then, once somebody buys something, then it's order tracking. You get an email and you say, oh, my package is on the way, it's coming in 2 days, and all that stuff. You do return. So every part of it sort of is moving information around. And today's modern companies are, I would say, for the first time in a place where technologically they have all the capability to compete with someone like Amazon. For all these
Mm-hmm.
years, many of these companies did not have the technology to compete with that. They could not do delivery in, say, a day or 2 days. But now you have a DoorDash or Instacart, which is a delivery sort of solution. They have all of these things. So data plays a role in all of these parts. Now, where does the connector come in? The connector's job is to really be able to take data from any system and move it to any system, right? So let's see an example, right? Somebody goes into say a DoorDash or Uber Eats or Instacart. They order a product. There's data that is enabling them to even know what product is there. For a merchant who gets that order, they have to maybe package it up or be know that somebody's going to come pick up and all that stuff. That has to go down to the store levels. It's coming from some website or app, going into their system, going down to the store level, informing somebody that to package the product. And when the thing is picked, then remember the delivery guys will send some data back saying, okay, it was delivered, or now there's a financial transaction happening between these two companies. What did I pick from you? What I delivered? How much money do I owe you? And all that stuff. So what we have seen in a practical way is that these things are happening much faster because of connector technology. Um, Store decides they want to partner with a delivery company. They have to expose some data to them. They have to be able to get data from them. Before this used to be, well, we're going to write some code. That code will fetch the data. There will be code that will get the data back. It's all happening automatically, like literally in hours. We've had our
Mm-hmm.
customers go live with these systems like in 2 days because they
Yeah.
can connect the systems, test it out, and do it. So the
Correct.
practical examples down to the customer come back to that experience that they get.
Fantastic. So now looking at 2022, 2020 and 21, given what was
Hmm.
happening in the world, a lot of companies had to reformat their whole strategies to
Yep.
get ready for the new world. Now, the way things are happening now with Omicron, and every few weeks you are seeing some mutation happening, this is the new reality where every company, whether it's a retailer or a company like yours who is working with retailers to make their lives easier, are looking at a hybrid model. Now, from your point of view, you have obviously studied and understood over the last 2 years how the retail industry has completely changed on its head upside down. In spite of the e commerce thing, there was a big shock to
Hmm.
the system. How did you get ready to create a system where you know as a businessman that for the next 4 5 years this hybrid model is going to continue and you have to be ready to be very agile given the circumstances that we live in today? How are you using your team who's probably scattered all over, your resources, your investors? How do you keep everybody happy, create the balance, and yet figure out that the next 3 4 years you have to completely maybe constantly innovate and be ready for the world? What and how do you manage to do that?
Yeah, there are two parts to this, right? There's what is
Mm-hmm.
happening in the retail world in general and in specifically, and then what's happening to work in general for technology companies that can afford to be remote. So retail, I think, is going through one of the most innovative phases, ever, maybe in the last 20 years. Okay, and it is a combination of a few things. First of all, this industry pressure was already there from Amazon, so everybody who's not Amazon has pressure from there, right? At least
Right.
here. Now, COVID came in and completely changed the equation because now going to a store became a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for various restrictions, right? And suddenly people's behavior changed. That they all these ideas of curbside pickup and delivery and all those things started to just grow very rapidly. The
Absolutely.
third thing that has been happening kind of underneath has been the whole sort of data thing. Because when we think about any retail company and compare them to the most advanced ones, whether it was POS data, whether it was returns, whether it was delivery of items in 1 or 2 days, or whether it was just the overall customer experience and how sophisticated it is, they were a little bit behind in technology in various parts.
Mm-hmm.
Now a combination of solutions have happened. For example, there are these checkout companies.
Mm-hmm.
Checkout from a new retail company you never bought from was painful. Now it's smooth. You just go on your phone and you're able to buy without name and address and credit card and all of that stuff that was basically a barrier. So
Mm-hmm.
the way we have prepared for that as a company specifically to retail is that Nexla actually works with a very broad set of retail companies and technology companies. So if I look at retail itself, Bed Bath Beyond is using Nexla. If I look at marketplaces, mobile first, social, Poshmark, is a good
Mm-hmm.
example. If you think about recommendations that companies provide,
Mm-hmm.
Bloomreach is a user of Nexla because a recommendation company also consumes a lot of data and applies their intelligence on recommendations. If you
Mm-hmm.
think about customer experience and loyalty, Jotpo is a technology provider. They also use Nexla underneath as a data platform. If you think about logistics companies like Narvar that do order tracking, they use
Mm-hmm.
Nexla underneath. If you think
Okay.
about delivery companies, DoorDash, so we have been fortunate to be plugged into various aspects of the entire retail experience, and that is allowing us to level up and give a much smoother experience back to to
Okay.
our the retailers and therefore their end customers. So
Okay.
one preparation was the again back to the connectivity, ability to connect and provide our customers with that confidence that they can put all these things together and create something better
Hmm.
and compete in the market. From a general business perspective, from a preparation side, I think we are fortunate in the technology industry that it is even possible to work remotely. There are industries where you could not. I
Yes.
mean, if you're
Yes.
running a restaurant, you are not working remotely, or in retail if you're in the store. So we are fortunate for that. What has obviously helped us is the fact that a tech savvy team means that we're all able to work remotely, collaborate. I would say that I hope this is temporary because the face to face, the person to person
Yes.
interaction and the sort of relationship that it builds and the trust it creates is hard to replicate. I think we are all
Absolutely.
getting by and waiting for the time when we can.
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
we'll end up in that hybrid state, right? I don't have to meet somebody every single day in the office, but hopefully we are doing that, often enough. So I think yes, a distributed workforce across Europe, India, US, and even South America now. So we are, there's a lot of coordination that happens from a time perspective, but
Okay.
I think we are figuring it out as we go, like
Yes,
much
I
like
think
anybody
everybody
else.
is.
Yeah,
It definitely gives me a lot of comfort for the fact that if I am clueless, I can see that the CEOs of the fan companies are as clueless. So that gives me a lot of confidence that at least
I
other
think
people are as clueless.
I think we have all, or hopefully, learned to accept the uncertainty,
Yes.
in a sort of a meditative way to some extent. Whatever happens will happen, and our job is to just do the best at the time that we can.
That's a very spiritual philosophy. I'm sure you have a lot of spiritual philosophy going into your company as well to try and
Yeah.
keep things at bay. So, what I want to now get into is a little more quirky, fun,
Hmm.
dystopian future. I'm sure you are aware of the metaverse and the big
Hmm.
VR industry and the AI industry. That's where kind of I live. Like, I don't live in the real world, I live in the virtual world. So, when we look at the digital twins, virtual influencer, the digital avatars. So,
Yeah.
and the big thing that the way the fashion industry has completely become the leader as far as the virtual fashion world is concerned, and they are integrating the real world fashion into the virtual world. I think it was 6 months or five, I don't remember, some months ago, where big brand, I think it was Gucci, Prada, one of these big fancy ones, where their bag was sold for a higher price in the metaverse as a digital good than it was
Hmm.
sold on Fifth Avenue in New York City, or the same bag. So we are,
Yep.
so now the big retailers, like if you look at Bed Bath or JCPenney and Macy's of the world, the dresses, like there are these fashion designers who are making digital dresses. So, which means that in the digital world, when we, and then you integrate the NFT world into it, like a
Hmm.
digital NFT dress. So, are you getting ready to look at these data points for digital product retail? So, let's say if you have Bed Bath and Beyond, and let's say they have a whole kitchen equipment, right? They have a whole kitchen section, and they have physical goods there, that they have one pan and one this, and there is a whole cycle that you do. Now imagine if Bed Bath and Beyond creates a virtual Bed Bath and Beyond, and they land up, let's say, collaborating with Roblox or Fortnite or these kind of games, and they have that, and you interact. So technically, they are also digital goods. Are you looking to get in integrated into that space, or that is something that you are looking to collaborate with other companies in that same space?
I think our focus as a company, is on data and probably will continue to be on data. But
Hmm.
remember, data is the original digital good. We're
Hmm.
all creating data, and
Hmm.
data has a value associated with it. A lot of
Hmm.
the thought process, therefore, is that how does that data sort of um, data creates value, it creates money
Hmm.
eventually for somebody, and how does that sort of get accessible to people who are creating data? That's where the NFT sort of equation will come into play, right? Because different entities are creating data to ultimately create the final value, and we have to
Hmm.
understand how that value goes back to them.
Hmm.
As far as the metaverse is concerned, I think the aspect of shopping or experiencing in a virtual world is absolutely coming. I mean, that's very true. I mean, as long
Hmm.
as we can get people to put on those VR headsets, I think that experience is extremely realistic. I've been at Nvidia where we were so focused on making that experience realistic, and I think one of the key things that we are seeing, like when you talk about the bag kind of being selling for more in the metaverse, one of the key things we're seeing is that when it comes to these sort of fashion products at the high end, a lot
Hmm.
of it also comes back to the traditional things about recommendation. What goes
Yes.
with what creates a look? Now, someone like Poshmark, does that through AI, but they also do that through influencers, people
Hmm.
whose fashion you follow, and all of that stuff, right?
Of course.
So I think data eventually sort of plays a role in making that possible. How do you look your best in your metaverse or create that metaverse experience, which is kind of a leveler in many ways. Your presence in metaverse is now not depending on are you on Fifth Avenue and do you have a big store there. Now, this
Yes.
is you could be a smaller company, more upcoming brand, but you could have the same sort of presence because now it's about attracting audiences, maybe through advertising or other mechanisms into coming to your virtual store experiencing it. And there is buying of virtual goods, but eventually it will also translate to buying of real goods as well. I mean, you are in here to experience
Absolutely.
that. I just spoke to my friend who started a company called avatar.me, and
Hmm.
it's all about seeing your furniture in your house, in your living room. It's not a VR experience, it's an
Absolutely.
augmented reality. And I tried that, and it makes sense. So we are absolutely getting in there. The role that data plays still goes back into discovering products, recommending the right products, making sure one of the key things that will increase, by the way, is also fraud and the ability to handle that.
Yes.
And it's again a very data driven problem solutions. Our job is to bring that data into the hands of the experts. You could be an expert in fraud, but you can't really deliver if you don't see the necessary data. So our job is to bring the data into their tools where
Hmm.
the experts can make the decisions, whether you're a merchandiser or a catalog manager
Hmm.
or a fraud expert, or you're doing customer support, or whichever aspect of the ecosystem you're
Yes.
supporting.
So I definitely think that you touching upon the term fraud and how, because the more digital you go, the more insecure you are getting, because you are letting yourself be available in different forms. Like identity theft is one of the real
Yep.
world problems that has impacted a lot more people because of this data explosion. So but you have become, your company is a Gartner cool vendor.
Yeah.
right? Gartner, obviously, a lot of people know what Gartner stands for. What does it mean for a company, a startup that you started out and then it has grown over the last 5, 7 years so much? What does it mean for a company to be a cool Gartner vendor? What kind of security branding that is bring to the table so that it becomes easier for you to convince people, potential clients, that you have an edge above the other? So should do you advise companies who are maybe trying to get to a place where they can just show their business card and people know that, okay, this is a secure company, we can trust him? If you could give your story about this journey of becoming a Gartner cool vendor.
Yeah, Gartner Cool Vendor is all about a focus on innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Realizing that certain problems have existed for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, and a fundamental big innovation or a disruptive innovation or something major has to happen to solve that. So what we have been doing on the data side has been recognized as that,
Okay.
which is coming from the understanding that there are thousands or tens of thousands of different systems doing different things, and you have to stitch them together. The
Mm-hmm.
data fabric that we talk about is stitching those things together, various systems together, to make that business more advanced. And that's where the data sort of part comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the innovation that they recognize is our system can observe data and automatically understand it and automatically get that connector generated. And the amount of automation that we're able to bring in is a game changer. So the
Mm-hmm.
cool vendor recognition is largely for that. As far as creating the trust in customers and saying, hey, we are secure and all those things, it largely comes from the fact that we are, of course, designed for security, but we are certified for SOC 2 Type 2, or having certifications like ISO, for example, or again, various best practices of technology design do get considered in the cool vendor, like how is this technology designed. And some technologies, because of modern know-how, are designed better fundamentally for security than maybe others that were not secure, and some things were put around them. So this
Okay.
security by design versus security by some sort of ad hoc solution. So it does recognize that it is security by design from that perspective, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But the trust, when I give somebody saying, hey, we are Nexla and you can work with us, is coming from that a little bit from that cool vendor. Okay, you guys know the technology,
Mm-hmm.
from the certifications that outside parties or audit firms have given to us that we are secure, and then from the trust of companies who are using us. The fact that some of the
Absolutely.
largest companies are using us for some very, very, very mission critical use cases is a source of trust, because their teams have looked at us, their teams have vetted it out. Okay.
Mhm. So, what is the biggest like security threat for a company like yours that you are constantly working with? Because I'm sure you have a very big security team that you're constantly working. So, given what has happened over the last 3 years, and we saw the whole explosion of blockchain and crypto, how can we not talk about that? So, does blockchain feature in whatever you are planning over the next few years? The retail companies, are they looking at blockchain, are they looking at crypto, and then do they come to you and say, okay, what is this crypto, how do we get in on it, is there a role for us, or are we being forced into becoming a part of this crazy, like the way 90s, as you talked about the dot-com bust, are we looking at another bust happening? Do you advise them to stay away? What is your point of view on this crazy new innovation that is kind of coming at us at such a speed?
Yeah, I mean, from overall a security perspective, when we look at blockchain, there are two things to understand, right? There's one part of blockchain is about a tamper-proof ledger.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is happening cannot be tampered, and those records are kept nicely. And then there's a currency part of it, which where you have your Bitcoin and various sort of currency associated things. So let's separate those two out. As far as the trusted ledger of what has happened, sort of being there, and the ability to do things like smart contracts, where
Mm-hmm.
those are parts that Nexla is kind of very centrally sort of, our innovation team is focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of data security, by the way, comes from the concept of governance, and this is an evolving thing. What data is valuable and who can see it? Of course, someone has to be able to see it, right? But how do we restrict that and have reasonable policies and execution around that? The
Mm-hmm.
role that blockchain plays in many ways, when we think about data as something that maybe goes from a merchant to a delivery company. Okay.
Yes.
Right
Mm-hmm.
now, this is an entity that you can track these things as a ledger. Like, data went from, just like money went from me to you, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
or you to me, or whatever is being tracked in a financial ledger. A data ledger would be about hey, what data went from where to where? What was the history of that? Can it be trusted? It can be trusted because we know it hasn't been tampered, you
Mm,
know. And why it hasn't been tampered is because the record keeping is happening in a tamper-proof ledger like a blockchain,
mm,
right?
mm.
So there is a part of data and the ability for companies to trust that data and to use it and to track it, and therefore maybe figure out what is the right sort of financial structure for them to collaborate around. That is kind of where one of the places it will play.
Mm.
As far as the pure play currency, and there's a smart contract part to it as well, which comes from when two companies decide and they do an agreement and say, I'll give you this and you will give me this. A smart contract is allowing you to automatically validate and execute that transaction without a third party kind of sitting in between, you
Mm.
know, and it's being that digital escrow person or entity. And I think that will happen a lot more.
Okay,
It
perfect.
hasn't happened that much yet. The understanding that I'm solving a problem, back to our problem solving thing. I'm
Mhm.
solving a problem for a customer, at the end of the day. And to solve that problem, I need to bring in data from all of these places and do that. And the ability to leverage the data from other places will lead to smart contracts around
Yes.
data. And I think, Nexla will certainly play a part in that. As far as the pure play currency part of the blockchain is concerned, I'm less clear. I think, it becomes probably a financial instrument, just like,
Everything
cash
else.
followed by credit card, followed by BNPL, followed by maybe this. I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
we'll see.
So one of the things, based on whatever I see, like if I had to sum up the use of blockchain in the big data, one of the things I see, and I'm surrounded by people in New York who are in the financial world, and they take a lot of data and they do a lot of projections of pricing and the bond markets and all of that
Hmm.
financial world. One of
Correct.
the things I feel is foolproof, if this blockchain is foolproof, where you have done a ledger system, the data that you collect and then you process and show it to your customer. For retailers, taking that data, that this was the original data, and put it in the blockchain, so that whatever results that come out of it, they can figure out that this result has not been tampered with, because that data, the raw data, has been put in the ledger, so that the raw data cannot be tampered with itself.
Hmm.
So I am seeing, like, some of the people, like colleagues that I've been talking to who are working with big data in, let's say, the commodities market or the equities market, they are talking about using data as a stamp, that, okay, this was the original data and this is the result, and that data has not been tampered with, because there's a lot of customized analysis and storytelling you have to do with data as well. Now, that deviation, how much of that is lie and how much of that is allowed in the financial world, I am thinking that would be a good use of this blockchain to prove that the data has not been tampered with. Is that something that you see becoming prevalent? The use of securing data by blockchain stamp?
I think certainly as a certificate of authenticity, I think at least, in the retail world, the way we think about this is there's so many marketplaces, by the way, also, and they have to deal
Hmm.
with fraud. Like, is this bag actually authentic or has it
Yes.
been tampered? Is it a fake and stuff like that? And there are obviously those sort of, token or NFT based sort of ways to look at that thing. From a pure play data stamped as like, okay, this is trusted. One of the things I think absolutely yes to your question. Yes,
Okay.
that will certainly happen. One of the things we do have to understand is that data volumes out there are in trillions and zillions of records. So blockchain technology is not at a point where it can scale at a record by record level, but you can take big swaths of data and say, hey, all this whole chunk of data that we have has been recorded and it has been,
Okay.
it is trackable and have a smart contract associated with who can access that and in what condition and so
Okay.
on. And I think that is absolutely going to happen. But the difference is that while stock market data is much more standard and well understood,
Mm.
a lot of the data that we see with, like, for example, data about all kinds of customer support requests and that helping
Mhm.
people do a better job of that may or may not be as standard to say, and
Correct, correct,
or
correct. Because
tampering may not be necessarily the sort of biggest
criteria.
concern at that point in those
Yeah,
cases.
yeah, that might not be a criteria. So,
Yeah,
so clearly you are in a very serious business and
yeah,
you work with serious numbers. So I'm going to take you away and bring you to my world, which is my Bollywood world and fun world.
yeah.
So we'll do some
Okay,
little fun things. Okay. So
yeah.
firstly, given given that the kind of career you have, I don't even know whether you have time to watch TV or shows. So I'm just going to ask some random questions, but if you have the answers, please give. This is just
Yeah,
fun.
I do sometimes watch stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So currently, what is your favorite program? Latest, what have you watched?
I most recently finished The Witcher. It's a
Oh,
show on
okay.
Netflix.
Yes. So what
Yeah,
did you
yeah,
like
I'm a
about
big
that the
fan of that.
most?
It's a fascinating story which has, of course it has Henry Cavill, which is a big thing, but it has all these magical stories about magicians and mages and witchers and monsters and all that stuff. So it's a fantasy land completely, and I like those kind of shows that take you in a completely different world. And
Fantastic.
yeah.
Okay. What is the latest book you have read or are you reading?
I'm actually most recently reading. I'm always reading multiple books as far as the business thing is concerned, because I jump into a specific chapter page, read 5 pages and put on the side. So most recent was a book called The Cold Start Problem. It's by one of the guys who was early in the growth team at Uber, and he
Hmm.
shares a lot of examples of companies, across the board, Twitch, Twitter, all these companies, and how they have solved specific growth challenges in the company, especially around network businesses, in the sense that there's a network effect of users and consumers. I'm quite fascinated by, you never get to know what is happening inside these companies, by the way. You just
Oh,
see the
absolutely.
outcome, and it's so
Yes.
fascinating to hear like how did they look at the problem. It's like a business case study.
Right.
But
So
yeah,
when do
it's
we
fun.
see your book on the shelf?
I don't know.
Okay. I'll look for that.
Let's
Okay.
Maybe you will write it. How about that?
Okay. Wow. Favorite superhero?
um I think I do like Iron Man, I would say.
Okay.
It's a
Fav-
little bit cliched, yeah,
okay.
but yeah, my kids are into Transformers, so I'm a little bit drawn to that.
Oh, come on. Don't do things that kids do. Don't be that dad. Okay. You are
Yeah,
from my neighbor in India. So
yeah,
favorite. So clearly you've grown up on Bollywood. I'm assuming you're from Rachi, my
yeah.
generation. Favorite Bollywood star?
Um, I think I'm a big fan of Amir Khan
Okay.
and his movies in general. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, if you had to have an alter ego, your digital twin in the metaverse,
Oh,
what would, yes. So what would that be?
like, are we in Bollywood terms or in
No,
general?
anything. It could be Hollywood, Bollywood, some fantasy land, whatever. Witcher inspired. Don't care. Your
Ah,
your
I'd
avatar
probably
in
be a
the
stand-up comic. That's my
oh,
role in the family. Yeah.
really? Okay,
Yeah.
great. If you were a stand-up comedian and I was a big fan, the first thing would be, "Acha, आप कुछ थोड़ा मजेदार सुनाओ." That's the standard that they say.
It's stand-up comedy's taken off quite a bit in
Yes. Oh,
India.
I love
Yeah.
it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the people who started it, like I follow them and they have made life so much nicer, even though
Yeah.
unfortunately right now 60% of them can't speak their mind out in India or
Yeah.
worldwide that matter, but hopefully that will change.
Well,
Great.
stand-up comedy is about observing the day-to-day and finding something so precise and insightful and funny in that. And
Oh my God.
I'm
Absolutely.
always awed by how smart these people would be to
Oh my
observe
God.
these things.
I mean, and I just go there and I just so many, and I can understand the fear that parents have that, oh my God, my kids are constantly on the phone for 6 hours because there's just so much fun content from them. You
Oh
just
yeah.
keep laughing because you don't want to, look at the real world and face the real world. So, do
Yeah.
you have trouble with your kids on screen time?
Little bit,
How old
not
are they?
much. They are my kids are 11, 8, and 4.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
still in a point where I can control and be their boss. I think that control is slipping. I can see
Yeah,
that
the
now.
top one is just going to get there in 2 years, and then you will be the most loser father ever.
They have a phone, and I control every single app and website they can use and for what time and when. It's
As of
going
now.
away soon. As of
Soon.
now. As of now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your opinion on virtual reality? Do you see data? This is the last question because virtual reality, augmented reality, AI, whether we like it or not, this is the new world. Next 30 years is the creator economy. The future of retail is digital. We are looking at entering a space that we don't know what will look like 20 years from now. So for you, as it is, parents are constantly struggling with screen time with their kids, but on the other hand, there is this race for VR, AR, VR headsets. There's not been enough studies yet. Companies like Nvidia and the top guys, everybody is innovating. Where How do you create a balance between your moral obligation towards not going, blindly into that because you don't know what the repercussions would be, but yet because it's innovation, you are constantly looking at it and figuring out the use for it. How do you tell yourself, is it the right time or not? How do you create that
Yeah,
for
look,
yourself?
I'm personally a big fan of new technology and VR. I've been in the video gaming world myself. I'm also a pilot, so I've worked in used simulators where it's realistic, and I can see that VR is capable of creating such a realistic experience in the online world.
Mhm.
Um, so there are, but what will happen with this technology and how will it create value versus how will it create different new types of addiction? I think that's how we need to understand that.
Mhm.
And as a parent, I'm all for my kids getting that experience. I don't want them to grow up and in 15 years later, like, oh, a lot of, by the way, modern day innovators came from playing video games. I look at
Yes.
the backgrounds of many people. They got
Yes.
interested in technology because of video gaming, and who knows what the new technology will create and all that stuff. I think the important thing that is hard for parents and we have to do in general is, when is technology useful to you and when are you controlling it versus when is it controlling you? When can you not let go of that thing because you're sort of becoming a little bit addicted to that? I think that's a general grounding we have to give to kids in anything. It could have
Yes.
been something else, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It will be something else 30 years from now. So, that's we just give them the basic framework and formulas or the way to think about life and what is important and what is not. And
Okay.
hopefully they make the right call, right?
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Saket. It has been an extremely enlightening conversation, and I do hope that I didn't come across like a complete idiot who didn't understand data at all. So I hope you didn't have to teach me ABCs and you got to say a few things to your audience. And one last advice to the next generation who will listen to these interviews and who are probably interested in reaching out to you, what would you like to tell them? Like as an advice to the young kids of today who are crazy about data and data analysis.
Yeah, I think data is a very essential raw material. If you think about the current world versus an industrial world, data is that raw material, and what do we create out of it is out there for us to all discover. So I think it's a very fascinating space for anybody who's interested in data. I would say definitely go in, understand the fundamentals of how what data is valuable, because it's also very noisy. You can just be
Yes.
lost in a lot of data. So again, we always go back from what is the end outcome we are looking for, and how does data help me as a tool, as a raw material to get there. So it's a fascinating space. I think a lot will come in the
Okay,
years.
great. Thank you so much. And this is Shailja signing off, episode number 3 with Saket Saurabh from Nexla. He's the co-founder and CEO. And I'm here with my producer Sachin from Retail Corner. And I hope to see you soon again with a new guest and learn a lot more with me. Thank you and bye.
Thank you.
If you wish to have a conversation with us, then email us at retailcorner@proxima360.com or visit our website at theretailcorner.proxima360.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe and see you next time.